Showtime 112 is a Trustmaster ambassador. Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. In the previous two videos, you could see how the pilots of Messerschmitt 163 Komet, the only operational rocket-powered fighter aircraft in history, attempted their first attacks against Allied aircraft, and how they eventually achieved some success in August 1944. After a relatively uneventful September, in which only one shoot-down of an Allied bomber was achieved, Komet pilots saw plenty of action on October the 7th. By this time, Allies identified the industrial plants at Leuna and Berlin as key facilities in the production of synthetic aviation fuel, which enabled the Luftwaffe to maintain its operations. Those plants were located in the vicinity of Brandes, the home base of Jagdgeschwader 400, the only operational unit flying the Messerschmitt 163, and their defense was the unit's main task. By early October, around 15 to 20 Komets were combat ready. On the 7th, Jagdgeschwader 400 was able to launch two attacks against Allied bomber formations. The first one occurred just before noon. Feldwebel Siegfried Schubert, the most successful Komet pilot, and Lieutenant Hans Both, a pilot with accredited Komet victory from August, were the first ones to attack. Accompanied by other pilots, they went straight for the B-17s of the 95th Bomber Group, approaching from various positions. Schubert first experienced some damage from Bomber's defensive fire, but it wasn't serious enough to stop him from making further attacks. Lieutenant Hans Both attacked a B-17 in the lead flight of the High Squadron. He came from below and achieved hits in the bomber's right wing. The aircraft was flown by First Lieutenant Day, and Both claimed it destroyed. Despite the damage, the B-17 made it back to base. Siegfried Schubert then made a head-on attack at another B-17. It fell away from the formation and 6 crew members bailed out. The exact identity of the bomber is not specified by sources, but testimonies from Mustang pilots of the 352nd Fighter Group, who were unable to prevent the Komets from attacking, confirmed the loss. Schubert increased the score by another victory, his 4th. But Schubert's luck ran out. During his second takeoff of the day, the airplane's combustion chamber caught fire and the engine cut out. The aircraft rolled off the runway as Schubert probably wanted to clear it for the airplanes taking off after him. Being fully fueled, the Komet's center of gravity was high, so it turned over and exploded. Schubert was killed. Despite the incident which took place in front of them, Both and other pilots took off and proceeded to search for bomber formations. Unteroffizier Kurt Schiebeler attacked a group of 10 B-17s flying in lead position. He eventually claimed shooting down an aircraft forced out of formation. There aren't any details about a possible identity of the B-17 which might confirm the kill. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Hans Both and Feldwebel Rudolf Zimmermann climbed and headed for the area southeast of Leipzig. Zimmermann spotted a lone B-17 1.5 kilometers away and below him. At that moment, the rocket fuel became expended and Zimmermann attacked the flying fortress in glide mode. But Zimmermann was spotted by a 4-ship flight of B-51s of the 364th Fighter Group. Lieutenant Elmer Taylor, the flight leader, reported flying at 25,000 feet and seeing the jet making passes at a straggling B-17. Taylor and his section were at a higher altitude, and they managed to close the distance between them and the gliding Komet. At 100 yards, Taylor even chopped his throttle to prevent an overshoot and then opened fire. He observed many hits, after which the German jet went straight down. Number 3 Mustang pilot Willard Earthkampf and his wingman Everett Farrell continued to pursue the Komet, shooting all the way. Rudolf Zimmermann belly landed. Mustang pilots made several strafing passes and destroyed the German fighter, believing they have also killed the pilot. Zimmermann was however able to get out of the Komet before the strafing commenced, and he survived. This was still not the end of a pretty miserable day for the Jagdgeschwader 400. Oberfeldwebel Friedrich Peter Husa and Unteroffizier Manfred Eisenmann failed to spot any enemy aircraft during their flight. But as they were about to land back at Brandes, a formation of bombers appeared. It seemed like the airfield might be their target, and the two pilots rushed to land back before any possible bombs. Husa made a very heavy landing, which made his Komet bounce back in the air. He then glided over the perimeter fence and ended up in a sand pit. A soldier was able to smash the plexiglass canopy and take the injured pilot out. Husa survived with a dislocated arm and concussion. But then Manfred Eisenmann came to land. He also landed too hard and bounced, but he was less fortunate than Husa. His aircraft cartwheeled and was completely destroyed. Eisenmann was thrown out of the cockpit and he died from his injuries. On that day, 7 October 1944, Messerschmitt 163 pilots made 3 claims against American bombers. Only one of these claims can be clearly confirmed, the one made by Siegfried Schubert. 11 bombers were reported attacked by the German rocket-powered fighter on that day. On the loss side, Jagdgeschwader 400 lost 4 Komets and 2 pilots. 2nd of November 1944 was the day of the last major effort of Messerschmitt 163 against Allied bomber formations. Leuna factory was again a target in a massive raid protected by no less than 728 P-51s. Jagdgeschwader 400 could muster 17 Messerschmitt 163s to fight the bombers. One of the pilots who took off on that day was Lieutenant Günther Andreas. He recalls spotting a group of bombers at 6,000 meters of altitude. Andreas dived towards the B-17, flying to the side of the main formation. He set his throttles to idle to conserve fuel. Andreas opened fire, but at the same time received hits from the defensive gunners. The canopy was damaged and Andreas tried to jettison it. But his speed was high and the canopy wouldn't detach, possibly for also being jammed from the hits. Andreas decided to slow down to 250 km per hour and finally managed to get rid of the damaged canopy. But immediately he came under fire of enemy fighters. Being so slow, he nosed over and went into a dive. Andreas then realized he couldn't pull out. His control wires had probably been cut in the attack. He decided to bail out, but initially he failed due to high drag as his fighter was diving steeply. He eventually succeeded at about 5,000 meters and he parachuted safely to the ground. The American pilot who shot down Lieutenant Andreas was Captain Fred Glover from the 336th Fighter Squadron. Another Mustang pilot who claimed the Komet on 2nd of November was Captain Louis Norley, operations officer of the 335th Fighter Squadron. Orbiting under the overcast, Norley observed an enemy aircraft spiraling down behind him. It then made a 270-degree turn and headed northeast. Captain Norley opened fire from long range but achieved no hits. For some reason, the German pilot made a diving left turn which enabled Norley to close the distance. This time, he achieved hits despite the high deflection, and the Komet slowed down significantly. Norley overshot, but was able to turn around and hit the Komet again from 400 yards. The Messerschmitt 163 rolled over and went straight into the ground, near a village at the eastern end of Bandes airfield. The pilot was Oberfeldwebel Jakob Bohlenhardt. 9 attacks by Komets were reported by American forces during this raid, even though more than 15 were spotted. 2 Mustang pilots claimed kills, Glover and Norley. Apart from Komets flown by Andreas and Bohlenhardt, 2 more were lost on that day. Oberfeldwebel Horst Holly suffered an engine flame out on takeoff. He bailed out, but his parachute didn't open. Some sources attribute his loss to defensive gunners. And finally, Feldwebel Herbert Stasnicki went missing in the Halle-Leipzig area. He was the first pilot to successfully bail out of a combat-damaged Messerschmitt 163 back in August. This time he wasn't so lucky. His body was found 2 days later, still in the cockpit. The exact reason of his death is unclear, but it was most likely defensive gunfire from the bombers, as there are no fighter claims other than Glover's and Norley's. This mission was symptomatic, and it clearly indicated that a tiny force of rocket-powered fighters simply couldn't cope with the apparently limitless number of escort fighters fielded by the US Army Air Force. Getting through the fighters to attack the bombers was a huge challenge, despite the speed. Jagdgeschwader 400 made no more claims until the end of 1944. 3 pilots were lost in accidents in this period. For the first 2 months of 1945, there was very little activity for the Komets due to various reasons. Among other things, Americans learned that they simply had to avoid Brandis in order to put their bombers out of reach of the comets. There was a claim of 3 bombers shot down on 3rd of March 1945 by Oberleutnant August Hachtel, but some sources say they were eventually awarded to Messerschmitt 262 pilots. Until the end of the war, Komet pilots flew plenty of missions and encountered Allied aircraft on a number of occasions. Unlike earlier, most of those belonged to the RAF. If you are still not tired of hearing details about Messerschmitt 163 in combat, let me know in the comments, and there might be a video about this final chapter. Until then, thank you for your time and keep watching Showtime 112.